Is this thing on?
Yeah.
Thank you. So the next
Why you're
question
one of
is,
my most favorite people.
I know, and you me, and I'm just trying to figure out how we can be okay. And
Yeah. How do we live amongst our neighbors that
yeah,
voted differently, think differently, and at the same time fight for a better world for all of us, where we all have the opportunity to thrive and achieve the dreams that we're looking for?
right. Yeah, and it almost puts so much burden on us because, like, I mean, and mind you, folks like you and I, we've worked to get this far. We've
Right.
worked for the community to get this far.
Right.
We've worked, and I will, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like when I say work, for the folks who don't know, both Mindy and I, like we're talking like we might have a day job, but after that day job, we're like 5 or 6 hours into the evening working on community work type stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like
Yeah.
the amount of work that we put into just creating fairness and like a moral standard, and then for all that to go away over some eggs and bacon prices,
Right.
it seems almost insurmountable, but I know I believe in us. So we'll keep pushing. But
Yeah. And what I keep saying is, I keep saying two things. A, armor up. So all of us need to put on our armor and fight for our communities and our neighbors near us, right? Fight for all. And at the same time, link arms with one another, because this is going to be a long, grueling battle. And we're going to need to tap out at times and take care of ourselves
Right.
and protect our own peace.
That's right.
But linking arms, because no one person, group, organization can do this alone. We have to combine, come together,
You're
and
right.
we may have different agendas, but if the overall agenda is to create a world in which we all, like I said, are able to thrive and live up to our dreams, then that's what we want for all of us, as long as it's not harming someone else. And
Right.
that's the thing. That's the thing, right? Where one side thinks we're harming, where everything's harmful and it's destroying America, the fabric
Right.
of the country. And it,
Well, and some of the gripes that I hear are over the last 10 years, we created wokeness, right? And not like the demonized wokeness, but
right.
what wokeness really was, which was, oh, there are systems that are unequal, even though we say they're equal. And here's the evidence, and how do we change it? And that's really what the drum that we've been beating, or at least I've been beating for the last 10 years is. So the next question is, what is the worst thing about society to you?
Hatred.
Hatred. That's right. Very easy. No, I agree. I agree.
I didn't even plan this, but pretty much because I've been wearing black ever since last Tuesday, because I'm in mourning. But,
Right.
I work in human services. Somebody calls me looking for resources. They're in some kind of despair. They need help. I don't ask them, well, how did you vote? Do you have, are you same-sex marriage? What's your nationality? What's your ethnicity? What's your documentation status or citizenship
Right.
status? Do you go to church? Are you an atheist? I don't ask any of that,
Right.
because none of that matters. Who's calling me is a fellow human who needs help, and I'm going to help them. None of the other stuff matters. And that's the point, is we're all human. And I think ultimately at the core, we are far more alike than we are different. If people will allow themselves to think, to understand that and to accept that.
Right.
Now, when you talk about white supremacists, they're not, right? That's,
They hate people.
I can't even wrap my brain around that, because that's just not how I think.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, hatred to me is the hatred, jealousy, fear. I mean, it's all kind of wrapped in around that same emotion. And
Absolutely.
and that, I think, is the destruction of so much of what we hold near and dear to our hearts.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Next one is, what do you believe is one of the reasons that Trump and the now largely Republic Congress was elected?
Unfortunately, because Biden was propped up for far too long, to the detriment of the Democratic Party, which then the infighting within was going on. And so then the Republican side capitalized on that. And
Right.
just the blatant misinformation. It's not even it's the blatant lies that were told,
Right.
and how media was used as a tool to misinform people, to
Right.
redirect people, to, herd the cats over to the other side. But I'm going to fix the economy. Clear, this man could say and do anything, the most vile things. They're eating the dogs and cats, whatever. I can just grab them, by the female body part and do whatever I want. And that was okay, because their own self-interest was, I need cheaper bacon, right? Like, well, as long as he's not grabbing me or my wife, my sister, my mom, and as long
Right.
as, not eating my dog or cat, we're good.
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting perspective, that despite his moral failings and his vile behavior, the reason some people are willing to excuse it is because it's not them.
Because it's not them. And that's
That's a,
the leopard will eat your face concept,
right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
not thinking in terms of collective. We as
Right.
collectively,
That's right.
right? We're thinking singularly.
That's right.
People they're tired of politics. And I'll be honest, I didn't want to see one more damn ad. Like,
I know. I know the text
electricity
messages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On both sides, right? But certainly on any Trump ad, I could not get to the remote control fast enough to change that channel or mute as fast as possible before I could change the channel. Like,
Right.
everything out of that man's mouth was atrocious,
I
was an
know.
attack on somebody,
Right.
was a lie, and just downright vile. But people, well, yeah, he says atrocious stuff, but he's been good for the economy. Like,
Yep.
the singularism, where
Right.
people just voted for what is good for me versus the collective. The other side talks about, is certainly in Christian nationalism discussions, of the breakdown of the American family, the nuclear family, or the
Yeah.
breakdown of, no, we need Bibles in schools, and we need to say a prayer in school, and we need to, all of these things where it's talking about collectively, indivisible, we as all one nation, right? That was the whole discussion with the kneeling for the national anthem. It's like
Right.
that one sentence, and under God, indivisible. I can't even think of the words.
For liberty and
But the
justice.
for
And all.
all,
Yeah.
it wasn't for all. It's never been for all.
Right.
Women are not even constitutionally protected. My ancestors, Native Americans, were not even considered human.
Right.
They
Oh
were
yeah.
considered savages. My son was only 3/5 of a human.
That's right.
Like, you're talking about both sides, you're talking about collective and nationalism and all of us together and unity. Yet everything out of your mouths and everything you do is to divide, to separate, to other, to, and to, have a bigger piece of pie for white men, and the women can get in line behind,
Right.
and they'll make the choices for them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. So do you feel like you did enough to affect the election in the way you wanted to see it go?
Because when you sent that question, I was thinking, did I do enough? So I'll tell you what I did do. I'm a PCO, so a precinct committee officer. So I represent my legislative district. So I've gone to all the meetings, and I've, gotten the word out. But because I work in city government, I have to be careful, but I've done everything that I could behind the scenes. I donated weekly to the Harris Walsh campaign.
Me too.
I've donated extra every time there was another thing.
Right.
I've donated to so many campaigns in our own state. In fact, a race that has won, I have donated at least once to, at least. I have, talked with folks. I have tried to help people understand, well, you're complaining about this, and the reason why this particular system or program or thing is happening is because when it was time to vote, this decision was made upstream from an elected official or whatever. I'm trying to help people understand how things happen and how votes matter.
Right.
My own son refused to vote. I'll say this too. The other thing that hurt the Democrats is the Palestinian Gaza war. That's the
Yeah.
other big thing. So my son refused to vote on the presidential level because of that.
Right.
However, I was like, you will not vote in our local state
Right.
election.
I feel like stop
Do
playing.
not have them. I said, your ancestors shed blood on the very ground that you walk and drive on, and you will not pass up your duty to carry on in their footsteps. You don't get that choice.
Right.
So literally, he voted and got his ballot in at like 7:50.
Yeah, that's fine as long as he got it
Right,
in.
he did it, right? Because
That's
he
fine.
understands, the electoral college, they just, there's a lot of young people that are just like, it's already been decided. We don't need to vote. It's going
Right.
to go against us anyway.
Right.
But the local, without the electoral college, they're like, okay, here's where my vote actually counts. Here's where I can actually say, have my voice heard.
Right.
So, but yeah, to have, I'm in I think now I'm just emotionally hungover.
I know. Yeah, that's a great term for that. It's a great term for how I feel. And I'm sure you saw my post the other day where I'm a city council member in Mukilteo and I was chairing the meeting and, I was, rushing to get to the meeting, got there on time, basically sat down in the chair and had to start the meeting. And I didn't take the time to like be clear about where I'm at, how I'm feeling and stuff. And then we turn and starts the Pledge of Allegiance. And like, I, there was a part of me that internally froze because the, what I put into the pledge every time I say it feels like it's been taken. And
Right.
while I know that like what I put into it hasn't been taken, nobody can ever take my power. But the message for everyone, liberty and justice for all, felt absent. And I held it together,
You're right.
but I almost cried. And I was just like, wow, this is like I didn't even realize I would get emotional about this because I thought I had gotten most of my emotions out. And it's like, no, it's the
Right.
emotional hangover. You still got emotions. They're just
Yeah.
waiting in the background. So
Yeah. And that's when you wrote that, when I read that, I was like, oh, I 100% understand that because I was somewhere recently and the Pledge of Allegiance it was at a fundraiser for our new governor, for Bob Ferguson at the convention
okay.
center. Oh. And they wanted to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was conflicted. I was like, so I did stand up, but I skipped that whole line.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I fought for this country. I spent 3 years of my life fighting for the freedom for all Americans in this country. And here I am now, 30 years later, fighting against my own fellow country folks
Right.
for those same freaking freedom,
Right.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
very, very conflicting.
Yeah.
And I get the same way. I choke up. It's like, do I mean what I'm saying?
Right.
Does it mean what it was intended to mean? Has the
Right.
meaning been diluted or lost or
Yeah.
only some people, clearly only some people are feeling it.
Sure.
Others are perfectly fine with
Right.
zero regard. And even though, even when Kaepernick knelt,
Right.
people are like, he's not anti-American. He's not going against the flag. He doesn't hate the military. He's
Right.
making a point that the liberty and freedom for all is not true and never has been.
Right.
But you could not convince some people of that. And
Mm.
Trump was one of them.
Right.
He needs to be executed. Anti-American. He's a traitor. It's really mind-boggling. I'm really flabbergasted. I'm going from the emotionally hungover. I am still emotionally hungover, but I'm really starting to enter that absolutely bewildered, flabbergasted stage of how the hell did we get here? How did this happen? As far as electing him again, he's not going against the flag. He doesn't hate the military. He's making a point that the liberty and freedom for all is not true and never has been. But you could not convince some people of that. And Trump was one of them.
Right.
How have we gotten to the point where thousands of Black people were texted messages on Wednesday, the day after the election, to report the following day at a certain spot and location to go pick cotton because now you are owned?
Oh, wow.
How did we? It just,
Yeah.
who
It
are
feels
these
like,
people, right? Like that's my.
right. No, yeah, you're right. You're right. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I find myself really, really having to fight the urge to look at every single person I don't know with suspicion and any kind of preconceived anything. I mean,
Right. You look like you voted for
it's an
Trump.
active fight.
Yeah. I know. I'm actually in the same boat. You know, it's almost like you can read the people who were Trump supporters because they're the only ones that are like really happy, right? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know. It's tough because I'm trying my hardest not to demonize people because, I'm a firm believer that I'm a person of light. I'm a person of goodness, of care, of empathy, of compassion, all that. And it's just really hard to swallow the fact that even Christian people or even religious people, I mean, that's not the core of who they are. The core of who they are might be their religion or it might be something else, but it's not, let's all take care of each other or let's make a world where everybody can thrive. Right.
Right. Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. It
All
makes
right.
me
So
emotional when I choke.
I know, and I'm sending hugs because you almost made me cry at least once or twice. So that's probably just you and the passion that you bring to everything that you do. Right? So sending love.
Which, that gives me hope because I know that there's more people like you, more people like me, more people like the people that we love and care for.
Absolutely.
That, like I said, if half of the voters, right? We can't say half the country because
Yeah,
15 million less people voted.
that's true.
But if half the voters voted him in, but half didn't, half,
Right.
half
That's right.
are,
We
are
cannot
willing,
discount that.
right?
Right.
Half are willing to, as I say, armor up. Half
Yeah.
are willing to continue fighting. As Kamala Harris said, the fight is not over. We've just begun. Like we are making incremental progress.
Yeah.
Change takes time, but we are moving the dial. And as long as we don't give up, and like I said, certainly each and every one of us is going to need to tap out from time to time, recharge, refill our own souls, and take care of whatever we need to take care of. But then when we're able, link arms again, and then we continue to forge forward. And that's
Okay.
where I, even being in DC, I honestly didn't care to go. And I'll tell you, I got on the plane and I was the first person they let on because I'm dealing with some health issues right now. But I wasn't the first person because when I got on, Senator Murray was sitting there.
Oh, wow.
And I said to her, and she looked at me and she recognized me. And I said, "Oh, hello." And I said, "Wow, what a time to be going to DC, right?" And I said, "I thank you for your service. And I know this job is extremely difficult and only going to get more difficult. So I, as a constituent, I thank you. And I know that I'm speaking on behalf of many people. We thank you for being there because it's going to be rough going forward." And she just looked at me and she just kind of nodded and kind of grimaced. And I said, "Just know that many of us are in this fight with you." And that's where that gives me hope. When I got to DC and I saw these other people from around the country and I was like, okay, we're all in this together.
Yeah. I think that is one of the most important takeaways for folks who feel disenfranchised is that's the mechanism of darkness is to make you feel less than, feel like you're isolated. And the reality is that's not true. And we need to hold on to that. So I'm gonna skip to the next question because I know I just want to hug you and
Thank you.
but the last question is what do you want to say to the version of you 4 years down the road?
We can do hard things and that we are resilient and that kindness and love wins. And that's what we're all fighting for, right? Like
Right.
you, the light will drive out the darkness.
That's right. I completely agree. Okay, Mindy. Well, that's all the questions we have. And I'm going to wrap up this episode by saying we are all different, but we are also all the same. And what
Right.
matters is we recognize that and move forward to make a better world for all of us. So
Right.
thank you for your work in the community and otherwise. But
Well, much love to you. Thank you for doing this because I think it's really important that we have these discussions because, we can't move forward if we don't learn from the mistakes
that's right.
and if we don't want to repeat. We have to figure out, okay, what went wrong and re-strategize. But in all honesty, really love, kindness, compassion. As long as we are leading
Yeah.
with those,
Right.
then, we're going to be okay. So that version of me in 4 years from now, it may not be where we want it to be, but I'm going to know that I'm doing what I can do to further humanity. And I'm doing what I can do for my family, my friends, my loved ones, and my community. And that's really all that I have the control over, my actions
Sure. Absolutely.
and,
Thanks,
and
Mindy.
continue to be a light.
Yes. Yes. And we all need to shine bright. Love you
That's
lots.
right.
And I'll
I
see you
love
soon.
you. Have a great day. Bye.